There's a great book called The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor that everyone can go get. That some of the research is very clear that the healthiest, happiest people, they're not just, you don't become happy by accomplishment. You become like, I don't need to graduate from high school to be happy. So what they are finding is it's not just getting the degree. It's not getting married that makes you happy. It's not having kids that makes you happy. It's being able to appreciate every moment in the moment.
Well, hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. We are grateful for you and so happy that you are here. We believe that you can change your life and ignite that fire inside you with the Sparks of Gratitude. And today, we want to ignite it with an amazing guest, Dr. Matt Townsend. Thank you for coming today.
Randy, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. And if you don't know who Matt Townsend is, look him up, matttownsend.com. The relationship guru. He'll make you laugh for days and forget that you had any problems to begin with. But online tools, coaching, events, trips to Mexico, anything you can have, he's going to help you with it. In fact, I'd known of Matt for a few years and had seen some of what he does. And then we actually met recently, in the last few months in person for the first time on one of Matt's relationship getaway trips in Mexico. And it was the best. It was so much fun.
It was so awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited, Matt. Hey, what's getting you excited this morning? What's getting you moving today?
Well, one thing that's getting me excited is tonight I go to a NBA basketball game with 3 of my grandkids, an 8-year-old and 2 5-year-old twins. A boy and a girl twin. And so let me just let you in on a little secret. My wife put together this great little opportunity for us to go hear a concert from these popular YouTuber musician people. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. And so I just told her that. I just said, maybe that's something that would be really fun for you to go with somebody that really wants to go. And she she was not offended, but laughed. And then, so she went and found my daughter that was going to go, but my daughter was going to go to the jazz game, but my daughter would rather go to the concert. I would rather go to the jazz game than the concert, even though I'm taking 3 kids and I don't know how to be a grandparent. So that's what I'm excited for. And what I learned, honestly, just recently is voice it. Dare to say it. So if I don't want to go, I said it and I put it out there, and then we turned it into something that was win-win for everybody. So that's what I'm excited.
And the 3 you're going with, I'm guessing they're excited to spend some time with Grandpa.
Yeah, they are. In fact, we just went to a play last night, 2 nights ago, and now they're like, "We going to go again with Grandpa?" But I'm scared because I was even asking my wife, "How do we do the bathroom thing?" I got 2 genders, and I don't know where to take these kids. So it's going to be a fun night, and I think they're excited, but we're all a little terrified too.
You will figure it out. Fill them with soda and treats and hot dogs.
That's right.
If they want it, get them 2 of them.
Exactly. We'll give you 2. They'll take them back bloated. Every parent loves that.
Oh, I'm excited for you. That's going to be awesome.
It's going to be cool. Yeah.
Well, Matt, to get things started and give people a little bit of background of who you are and how you ended up in the role that you are, could you maybe tell a little bit of your story and how you ended up being the world's greatest and funniest relationship guru?
Oh, that's scary. That's a lot of pressure. So weirdly, and this is, by the way, something I'm immensely grateful for, believe it or not. So I grew up in a family where my parents divorced at 8. I was 6 when they separated. They divorced when I was 8. And so because of that event and hearing them argue and and they're really good people, they just didn't know how to relate to each other in intense situations and with a lot of pressure of a young couple. I always watched people and I always watched relationships. And I think that painful 8-year-old had this goal in his life to always learn a way to help people learn to relate better. So it was just ingrained in me. And I'm so grateful that not that I had divorced parents, but I'm grateful that it turned into something positive and appreciative instead of something depreciative and negative. And so that's kind of where it began. I was the kid that every time I'd go and hang out with friends, I would watch their parents. When I'd go have a sleepover, I'd watch the parents and how they relate. I was always that creepy Townsend kid watching the parents. Then I went to college. And when I went to college, I kept having this feeling in my heart that I needed to help people learn to communicate. It was always about communication for me. But I didn't know what job that is. What's that job? Who's the person that helps people talk? This was in early 90s. And so somebody said, well, that's a therapist, right? So I went and studied Freud and started going into psychology. And then I'm like, that guy's messed up. That guy's got parent issues. So I didn't like the psychology side of it. I liked the communication side of it. In fact, I took a class in interpersonal communication at the University of Utah. And we studied this book by a guy named Stephen Littlejohn. And he's an academic communication theory expert. And I loved it. I have never loved a class more in my life. But then I kept thinking, is there a job there? Is there a job there? So then someone said, go into law. Lawyers help people talk. And then I thought, I'm not sure about that. It seems like they help people fight a lot. So I didn't know what to do. But I got a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Utah. I then went and got a master's degree. And as I was studying for a master's in communications, by the way, notice communications, I fell in love with a theory that's called dialogue theory. And dialogue theory is an interpersonal communication theory. This is all deeper than any of us need to know, but I loved it. And if you've ever read the books Crucial Conversations or Difficult Conversations, or what's the other one? There's one more. Crucial, Difficult,
Confrontations?
There might be difficult confrontation. What is the other one? Difficult, crucial, and anyway, we could spend hours doing it. Every single one of those comes from dialogue theory. So I did my master's thesis on dialogue theory. Simultaneously, I got a job at a company a lot of you may have heard of called Franklin Covey Company. And I started traveling around the country working with executives on how to help them lead people. So I spent 7 years as a consultant with Franklin Covey Company, got to be on their book writing team, got to get a lot of experience in the corporate world and a lot of experience speaking and training. Meanwhile, I'm getting this master's degree in dialogue theory, got it done, was loving my life. Nothing could be better. I was the youngest presenter in one of the leading training and development companies in the world. And I got this weird prompting, I don't know what else to call it, that I need to move on, which was nuts. Like, what? By the way, when I was in the corporate America world, I would go to training department and develop training development departments all over the country, half the Fortune 500. And I got to know a lot of corporate executives who were all going to get Ph.D.s from a program in Santa Barbara called the Fielding Graduate University. And it's a really awesome program where they use faculty from all over the country, and they bring them in from universities. All these different universities come in, and then you can get an accredited Ph.D. with these experts. And I just kept feeling prompted to do two things. I needed to leave and go start helping people talk, and I needed to go get a Ph.D. So I went to Fielding, and it was really expensive. And I went and quit, and I started and became a divorce mediator because I thought that would, what would be better than that? And then I realized these people hate each other. When you're divorcing, they really fight a lot. But I finally sat with people in major conflict, and I had all these tools that I had learned, and I was learning more in my PhD program. And so I started just divorcing people. And I only did that for about 1.5 years or 2 years. But in those 2 years, I took all of this great theory that I had learned in dialogue theory, and I started putting it to practice with these couples. And over time, I found out that they were the happiest divorcing people you've ever seen. They really could communicate better than ever. They could solve their own problems, but they'd still be divorced. So I realized I'm not going to divorce them anymore. I'm just going to start coaching people. This was before coaching really existed in the kind of interpersonal, like life coaching didn't really exist yet. Everything was still counseling, but I didn't want to be a counselor. Meanwhile, so I'm doing that, and I'm starting to then pick up clients, and I have a lot of mediators that their clients aren't sure they want a divorce, so they send them back to me, and then we started teaching them skills and tools and started saving these marriages. And finally, I found once the people have the tools, they'll heal themselves, right? Once they have the skills, they'll heal themselves. Meanwhile, by the way, this was a little bit of serendipity. I went to one of my first classes in my Ph.D. program, and the guy who was my faculty advisor was a guy named Barnett Pierce, who, by the way, is an expert in dialogue theory. And it just so happens that he was in my master's thesis. I had cited him. And I had also, by the way, cited that Stephen Littlejohn, that guy that first book I ever read as an undergrad. I cited him in my master's thesis. So I'm sitting in my PhD program in Santa Barbara, and it happens to be that my faculty advisor now is this guy I revered. I didn't even know this, but I revered him, and he's now my faculty leader. Then he brought in a guest speaker, and it was the coolest moment of my life, because I'm sitting there and he's like, I'd like to introduce you all to a friend of mine named Stephen Littlejohn. And Stephen Littlejohn came in, and he's the guy that wrote my favorite interpersonal communication book ever. And no, it's just academic. No one would love it, but it created this confirmation for me that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And so then I went and got a master's degree in human development, which was a big focus in positive psychology. And then I got a PhD in human and organizational systems, which is how the patterns we create together in our systems. And so I put all of that together. And then over the years, I've just been building more and more content and curriculum after coaching thousands and thousands of couples, a lot of which are on the verge of divorce. Because when I started, a lot of my clients were high conflict clients. So I really got to learn how to do it with really intense people on the verge of divorce. But what we eventually did is through my doctoral dissertation, I was able to validate my process. I wrote a book called Starved Stuff, Feeding the 7 Basic Needs of Healthy Relationships. I have then gotten really good because of my old Cubby days. I was always really good at creating content. So I'm creating tons of content now. And then now we have the great blessing of having all of it being able to be put on the digital world. And now I can put my classes and workshops down. We train coaches to be coaches. I have a program called the Peacemaker Program, where we'll teach you how to coach people and using all these relationship skills. I have a Starved program. I have a TED Talk that is based on what's called real communication. I do a lot of work on anxiety because I see anxiety as a major driver of the reactivity that causes a lot of marital issues. And we're now creating a really cool program on ADHD as well. So it all kind of comes full circle, and it all starts weirdly with the gratitude of parents that couldn't get along. And now I get to basically testify every day to hundreds of people about what I wish I could have told my parents to make their relationships better.
There's so much there, Matt. I'm going to circle back to where you started, the bookends of that explanation, which is the gratitude for parents who divorced. It's a really interesting thing to say, and a really next level way to say it, of finding the gratitude in something that could be,
catastrophic,
negatively life-changing, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And probably was in many ways. You mentioned something that after that experience, even as an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, you would be that creepy kid.
Creepy Townsend
watching
kid.
Adults' relationships and your friends' relationships. I remember reading, I think it was Brene Brown in Atlas of the Heart, maybe, where she kind of talks about this sixth sense that she had of something that's going to happen, in relationships, and kind of observing the signs. Can you compare it to that in a way where you had this ability?
Yeah. And you know what is intrinsic about it is I call that character strengths. So I believe 2 or 3 things happen to me that converge to create this optimal moment, this perfect opportunity for me. I think it's why it was able to be turned positive. One is that I had a great life, and I still had a close relationship with both parents. The idea eventually became they just couldn't get along. It wasn't anything about me. So I was always able to kind of internalize that it was just them, but I still worked with my dad every day, and I lived with my mom. And so that was good. But some other things that also happened that I found out later is one thing that might be what Brené's talking about, this intuitive sense, is I found out that I am what's called a highly sensitive person, which is about 20 to 25% of the population. By the way, I believe my parents are both high sensitive, which is probably why they didn't get along. And so high sensitives, there's a great book, if anybody wants to study this, it's called The Highly Sensitive Person in Love by a woman named Brené Brown. No, by a woman named Elaine Aron. One of the things that high sensitives have, it's 20% of the animal kingdom. So 20% of giraffes are high sensitive, 20% of elephants are high sensitive. And it means we pick up 4 times more physiological data than everyone else. More smells, more sound, more heat, more vibration. We are more sensitive to light. We feel pressure. We can walk into a room and feel like the energy of the room. So all of this is going on inside of me, and I didn't even know it. But it made me super aware of what's happening to the people around me. And what is amazing about it is I believe it's this high sensitivity that actually leads so many people to anxiety, to depression, and to ADHD. Because if I pick up 4 times more information, I'm going to be more overwhelmed. That's anxiety. I'm going to be more depressed at how I lack. That's depression. And I'm going to be more incapable to focus and unable to focus, which is ADHD. And nobody talks about high sensitivity. So a high percentage of the clients that come into my office that are really reacting strongly to each other are high sensitive. And so that helps me to understand that. When I was a little kid, Randy, I'd go play Little League football and I'm in the huddle and I could smell the guy's pants across the huddle from me, like his crotch area, not to be gross, but I could smell, and I shouldn't smell that. But he had never washed his pants. And so I'm like, hey, Tommy, have you washed your pants? And he's like, no, what? And I'm like, you can take the pads out. We can wash those pants. And your mom can do it. Just tell her. And then they'll be clean and then we won't have to smell your pants. And meanwhile, the coaches are yelling, call the play. So I was never a great football player, but I always kind of knew what was going on. I was always attuned to it. When the coaches would come over, I would know 20 seconds before they get to us that they're mad. And so I wouldn't be on the front row and I wouldn't be talking. And I would so if you notice, high sensitives, it's an evolutionary trait. And I honestly believe it's God's way. It's nature's way of making sure that there's somebody watching out for the herd. And so that's one thing I had going on. And if I'm a betting man, just having watched Brené enough, I'm pretty sure Brené is a high sensitive. Number 2, I know what my character strengths are. I didn't know them then, but my number 1 character strength or my number 1 virtue is social intelligence. So I'm high sensitive and I'm socially intelligent. And my second strength is I'm spiritual. So I can connect to higher powers and just higher feelings and a higher purpose in life. My third strength is perspective and wisdom. My fourth strength is creativity. I never do anything the same way twice. My fifth strength is I love learning. I hated school, but I got 4 degrees in it. And when I was in high school, I didn't think I was going to college because none of my family had gone to college, really. One sister had. And my sixth strength is fun, playfulness, and humor. Those 6 strengths, along with my high sensitivity, have made me what I am when I use my strengths. And when I don't use my strengths, some would just call it intuition, but I call it high sensitivity with a history of certain pains that took me deeper, and my self-awareness and my social intelligence, it helps. So those things combined, I think, have driven me to be more of what I am. And weirdly, the painful thorn in my side of parents that couldn't get along gave all of these other gifts something to work on. And again, I'm somebody that brilliantly lucky and blessed, but I just happened upon it. I didn't know any of those, by the way, were my strengths until I knew them intuitively. I knew I was good with people. I knew I was creative and I knew I was funny, but I didn't know how they'd come together until later. I started studying positive psychology and learned about an assessment that every one of your listeners can go take, AuthenticHappiness.org. Go take the questionnaire. It's called the VIA Character Strength Assessment. It'll take you about 40 minutes. And by the time you're done, you'll know what your top 5 strengths are.
And it's great. It's fun and enlightening. Yeah. I've done it. Kathy's done it. And it's interesting to learn And like you said, intuitively, you knew that those were strengths of yours, but you really didn't know maybe how to define it or fit it in
together
to the whole and come together. Yeah. So I encourage people to do that. It's really enlightening. You mentioned several of your top strengths, and one of those that seems to be kind of on the heels of your top strengths is fun and humor. Yeah. And that is playful, something that's very apparent in how you interact with people. You are hilarious. And when you're coaching or teaching in events and so on, it's hilarious. And so I want to know how that plays a part in the way that you coach one-on-one and in groups, and how that impacts and makes it change.
You bet. So, by the way, that humor, it was something handed down by my father's side. My dad's hilarious too. In fact, I to this day still use a lot of his jokes to my kids. And then my kids are now using all of those jokes to their kids. So they were handing it down. But part of what I found, and some of this I honestly learned when I was the odd kid, because again, my parents were the only parents that were divorced in my neighborhood. So of all my friends, there were hardly any divorced parents. And then over time, more became divorced. But I knew I could be funny. And if I was funny, I knew I'd be accepted. But I also knew, and I knew it was something I was good at. So I would just I'd lean on my strength. So when I started becoming a coach and you're sitting there dealing with two people that are divorcing because he had an affair and she now has an STD because of his infidelity, it's pretty intense. That's an intense moment. And so I wouldn't just make light of anything. But what I found is in those intense moments, humor or just fun or just irony can immediately take the pressure out. And so what I found is if people can laugh, they relax. And then when they relax, I can influence them more. I always say, then I can shoot more truth in there. So when I have an audience and everyone's tense because we're learning about something about a relationship and I'm about to have them go do an activity, they get tense, then I make them laugh and you'll see everyone relax. And then when they relax, I can shoot truth in because they're open. So it's this chemical thing I've learned that you shoot enough dopamine in, they feel good. You get a lot of oxytocin in there when they're connecting and talking. You get a lot of just all the good, feel-good chemistry, all of the adrenaline. So when I'm teaching, I'm trying to chemically lubricate everybody. And once I've got them laughing, then everyone relaxes to a point that I can say stuff that no one else can say. I say the stuff that everyone in the room thinks but doesn't dare say. And I can only say it because they trust me because of the fun and the humor. But then I still then hold their heart sacred. So I don't ever make fun of them. I usually can make fun of me, or I usually jokingly make fun of the person on their right because they don't have this problem. Yeah. So I always say, I'm not here to teach you guys anything because you're killing it. Look at you. You're amazing. We're here to work on the person on your right because they're jacked up. And everybody eventually looks at the person on their right. And I'm like, don't look at them. Don't look at them. You know who they are. Like, you brought them. But that's super real. Everybody in the room, when we're talking about like a relationship, is sitting there thinking, oh, I hope he's hearing this. I hope he's listening because he needed to hear that. But the wife is saying the same thing 5 minutes later. So I use the humor really it's a killer tool. And it's also, so again, it's something I'm really grateful for because it's something I don't think about much. Like, it's scary when people say I'm funny, because that actually puts pressure on me to be funny. But like, I have a big date night every year that has about 1,000, 1,200 people that come. And every year I try to have new content. So it's like a stand-up comedian with new content every year. But that's scary to me, except I don't feel the pressure of it because I couldn't go be a stand-up comedian. I actually probably could, but psychologically I couldn't. I need to be an academic or a pseudo academic so that's a different role. So my job's not to entertain you. That's why for me, it's the easiest job in the world because I'm not there to entertain you. I'm there to actually educate you. I just use entertainment. But the pressure you would feel if you were there to actually entertain them would be terrifying. Now it's on.
If you're there to educate and help and coach, and then you make them laugh here and there. Yeah. It's a win. But if they're expecting to laugh every 4 seconds, there's the pressure.
But that, by the way, is the funnest moment for me. And I do it all the time. And this is the creative side of me. And the fact that I read people well, and the fact that I'm high sensitive means I've lived deeply. High sensitives live very narrow lives, but very deep, because we iterate so much in our lives. So I have a big well of stuff to draw on, but I'm always innovating something new and funny. Then I say it, but 90% of the time, I'll never remember it again. But so I've always, for the last 10 years, I've been recording everything I do. And by the way, I never go back to them. I'm waiting for some artificial intelligence source to come in where I can just put my audio in and it can document and outline everything I said perfectly. And I think it's here now. It's here. Humor to me I think it very deeply parallels gratitude's source, because it's emotional and it's positive resonating. And so it's something that's more about, I think, your essence or your soul than your mind even, and your body.
Well, I think it seems clear that all of your character strengths fit in there to support that capacity to hold somebody's heart sacred and provide that humor. Like in the book, Radical Candor, being able to say those things which are direct and uncomfortable, yet if you create the environment where somebody knows that you love them, you're able to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And in your case, by the way, there's nothing more safe than that moment. That's power.
Yeah, and I've experienced it, and so you're right on.
Yeah. Thanks.
Can we switch gears just a little bit? And you talk about something about 4 things that all children need to know.
Yeah.
And when I say children, that is you and me and
every human.
It's everybody.
Exactly.
So because we've all been a child, if we're not one right now.
Right.
And what are those 4 things?
So then this is actually where my acronym of STARVED came from. It's actually, again, it didn't come from this research. I just intuited it, and then it paralleled the research perfectly. But there's an entire theory in relationships called attachment theory that is actually now last 10 or 15 years been getting popularized. It's been around for about 30 years. But the guru of it is a woman named Sue Johnson. And she wrote a book called Hold Me Tight. But the basic premise of attachment is the fact that every human being has to learn emotionally how to manage their emotion in a way that they can stay open in relationships. Or if they don't learn to manage it effectively, they learn to either fight or flight in the relationship, because our survival instinct starts governing how you relate. The 4 basic needs are very simply, every human being growing up needs to know they're lovable, that there's not a condition to being loved. You're just loved. You don't need to get a 4.0 or great grades to be loved. You don't need to be an awesome athlete to be loved. You're loved no matter what. You need to know that you are capable, that you don't know everything, but you're able to figure it out. And there's people around you that think you're capable. And you've got to believe you're capable. You've got to believe that you belong to a tribe, that you fit in, and that you have your group. And then you got to know that you're safe. So when you know you're loved, capable, that you belong and you're safe, you can relax in life. You can relax and grow deeper into the bonds of the people you're with. If any of those needs are violated, which they were with me at 8 when my parents divorced, then it starts to put your attachment needs into distress, because now they're not certain. And when they're not certain, survival kicks in, your fight or flight turns on, and now I'm either a fighter to know I'm lovable, capable, belonging, and safe, or I'm a flighter and I run from it. So I don't even care. I don't even like people. I don't even want friends. I hate people. Or I become a freezer and I don't know what to do, or I become a pleaser and I do way more than I should. And so fight, flight, freeze, or please become the behaviors that we kick on. And then everything in our relationship is about, anytime I feel vulnerable because those needs aren't met, I go to fight or flight. And that creates the number one issue I witnessed with every couple divorcing. They're all in fight or flight, which is why one will chase and one is always running away. And when one's chasing and one's running, it's not going to go anywhere. And if you corner them, this one will come back. Then 2 people are hitting at each other. And then boom, it explodes, and then we both withdraw. So that's the chase, that's the fight, that's the flight. And some will never fight. They just stay and please and please and please and please until they can't please anymore. and then they run, and then they come back and blow it up. And so that pattern of attachment, the researchers are finding that currently 60% of millennials have a hard time attaching. And by the way, you can tell it right now, because for a lot of those people, the world's very unsafe. Everybody's after them. Now I have to manage what you say, how you think about what I say. If you roll your eyes, if there are aggressions or microaggressions, I now have to actively fight to protect it. Some don't actively fight to protect it. They just move on and don't care. Both of those aren't healthy. Eventually, we've got to all be in the same space with each other and have a healthy relationship. So attachment theory, I found, is the number one driving source of most of our conflict, our inability to connect to people. And we're all dying of starvation because we can't be fed.
And you help people realize this, because it's something that's, I can't unknow that you've illuminated this with me, and Kathy and I realize that, where I fit in that, she fights and I flight.
By the way, statistically, that's normal, Randy, right? 70% of the time, women are the pursuer, the fighter, and men are the withdrawer 70% of the time.
Well, I was hoping you'd say that we were unique and above average, but I guess I'm just average. I'm just like
you're both
everybody
jacked
else.
Up, right?
I'm jacked up like everybody.
You're both jacked up. You're just like everyone else.
Yeah. And when you meet with, I guess, one-on-one with couples and you're helping them, maybe even before you talk about it, can you just see it from a million miles away with your...
Yeah. And I do some assessments when they come in. So we have like an in-depth relationship assessment. So by the time I walk in the room, I already know what their starved issues are. I know what the smoke is. I can pretty much tell what their fire is going to be, their starved stuff. But I also know the triggers and the behaviors that they do. So when somebody is starved or doesn't have safe attachment, they generally do 6 things. And this is how I learned this, watching every divorcing couple. Every divorcing couple, when they would talk about even anything, even about the health of their long-term relationship with the children, they would still get very self-protective. So anytime I see too much self-protection and not relationship protection, then we're already in what I call the starve spiral. So if I see selfishness, if I see reactivity, if I see polarization, if I see negativity, if I see hopelessness, like this will never work, he's always done it, it'll never get better, or if I see any signs of abandoning, those generally are the 6 signs of the spiral. Those are the 6 behaviors in my program I help people learn to reverse. And the only way to really reverse it is to go, like you found out, and remember that the smoke of what we're fighting about today is really more about where you learned if you're lovable, capable, belonging, or safe. And if you didn't have that, so an example, when I was 8, my parents divorced, so I learned that I had to be more aggressive in proving I'm lovable. And one way I could do that was my humor. People loved that more. So I used that way more as a skill set or a tool, which helped me get better at it, weirdly. But if my wife gives me feedback, like, you didn't need to say it that way, they're just kids, you don't have to be mad. The minute she says that, she says it just as an adult woman, but I receive it as an 8-year-old boy who's being rejected. So I don't go into my 54-year-old Ph.D. script. I go into my 8-year-old boy who has to fight to be loved, or I'll just flight and I'll just go disappear. Yeah, I know I'm a horrible husband. I'll just disappear. And then I go wallow like an 8-year-old boy. But at any time, I can fix this by just noticing, oh, my little 8-year-old's here. And then I can stop, take a big deep breath, reset, and then go into my adult paradigm and fix it. Go apologize, go fix it, go get better, go talk to my wife about, yeah, sorry. And hey, when you just said that, I took it as you're threatening me because I'm not lovable. And she's like, that's not what I meant.
You tell that example. And the way that you teach, in my experience, is you talk about yourself and you're like, that 8-year-old boy just felt like nobody loves me. I'm not good enough, right? And with all of this, all these 4 degrees and all the education and thousands of coaching clients and successes, and you still have that in you, yet you have the knowledge to and an awareness to be able to step back and look at it. And you can help me, you can light that candle in the dark room, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, and what's so funny about it is everyone can, if we, like you said, if it's been illuminated that's the issue. But if what we're fighting about is what I said to the kid, then my wife and I call that the smoke. Then we stay in that smoky issue, which is never the issue. It's about what I felt. And what I felt was, so STARVED is an acronym that includes the lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. But I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like she trusted me. I didn't feel appreciated. I didn't feel respected. I didn't feel valued or validated. I didn't feel encouraged, and I didn't feel like she was dedicated. So when those needs aren't met, I starve. And when I starve her. And I starve the kid. And I starve anyone around me. So that's the rule. Starved people starve people. And so once we start having the real, I call it a real conversation about the real issue, which is really where that trigger came from. And once I don't choose to just run with it, we call it, once I'm not fused to it, then I can defuse by looking at it from another perspective as an adult and choose the right response for that moment now. And the minute I do that, I weaken the 8-year-old response and I strengthen and embolden the adult response, the healthier response. And once I've done that enough times, I can literally release the 8-year-old, right? And the other cool thing is, if my wife understands that's part of my history, then she could actually preempt some of this by even how she critiques me. Like, hey, I love you. You're the greatest dad in the world. And when you just said that, in my ears, it sounded like you were putting him down and it hurt the little kid. So I love you. Just watch out for that, Kay. And that would be so much easier for me to hear. So she could help me not go 8, but it's not her job to not make me go 8. It's me going 8. But then I call that, by the way, Randy, I call that carrying my cross. She can now carry my cross for my crud, and I can carry her cross for her crud. And that's, I think, honestly, why we get married. We don't get married to just have babies, and we don't get married to just torture each other, and we don't get married to complete each other because we have the exact perfect opposite things. We get married because we need somebody that will help us heal our past and help us to become this healthy adult that we need to become. You'll see it all the time, Randy, when somebody has one of these attachment things, and 60% of people do, the minute one person goes parent, you'll see the other go child. And then sometimes when that one goes child, you'll see this one go child. So some of the biggest fights you will ever see look like 2 12-year-olds fighting. You're dumb. No, you're dumb. You're dumber than I am. And it's just, and so when I sat and watched it, I'd sit there and think, man, these people are sure immature. But what they were is they were both 8-year-olds, right? With real pain, and nobody knows how to fix it. So that's what we wanted to teach.
I'm laughing, and everybody listening is probably just nodding and saying, "Oh my gosh, that's the guy next to me. It's not me."
That's right. That's the guy. It's the guy on my right. That's
right. Oh my goodness, that's me and Kathy, and I laugh at the things that she says in total sweetness that make me feel like the 8-year-old. And I'm like,
yeah,
why'd you gotta hurt me so bad?
Yeah, you don't need to be rude. What's so cool about that? And this is a really essential learning in life. And it's probably one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life, is that it's never about them. So the biggest, I think, error we all make is our mind makes us believe they're the problem. The mind does not ever want to think it's the problem. Now, some of our minds think, oh no, I'm the only problem in the earth. And so that's what I call the under mind. And the over mind is everyone else is the problem out there. But whatever you're fighting about is usually never the real issue. The real issue is always how you're interpreting it. And the only power you have really is to manage that inside game. And once you can manage the inside game, to not take offense, to not fight, to not run, to not please, and to not freeze. Once you can overcome those reactions, it doesn't mean, by the way, you can't still do something pleasing. You just don't do it as a fearful pleaser. You do it because you reach back, and you always reach back to do the right thing. As long as I just do the right thing in this moment, and if I didn't, awesome, you blew it, then we're going to go back and we're going to fix it by correcting it with the right thing, which is an apology, and as soon as you'll just submit to do the right thing, either in the moment, before the moment, or after the moment, I don't honestly believe it matters. It's just how much pain do you want? Do you want to suffer pain before, during, and after? Or do you want to just suffer pain during? Or do you want to just suffer pain before? Either way you do it, you're going to have to self-master. It's always self-mastery. It's not other mastery. In most relationship, anytime you learn anything relational to get more from a relationship, then you start to do it other mastery. I'm trying to get something from you by you being different for me. Instead, the most pure way I found is self-mastery, and then let people be what they are. And then if it doesn't work, you'll still have the power to move on. You'll actually be more power. You'd be more empowered to move on because you have more character, you have more integrity, you have more honesty, you have more ability, you can move on. Or you can stay in and work better.
I love it. Well, we're getting close. I have a couple questions I want to address with you. You bring gratitude into your coaching, and I've heard that, and there's some models and tools you talk about. One is, these ABCs, 3 keys to
and healthy, happy families, happy lives.
And those 3 keys to healthy, happy families and lives are, appreciate today. They're ABC: appreciate today, believe in tomorrow, but live today. And connect deeply. Could you talk a little bit about that? And maybe we can highlight the appreciation piece. Obviously, it's sparks of gratitude, of course.
And this comes from a lot of work in positive psychology. And there's a great book called The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor that everyone can go get. That some of the research is very clear that the healthiest, happiest people, they're not just, they are not accomplishing more. You don't become happy by accomplishment. You become I don't need to graduate from high school to be happy. But if you remember, before you graduated from high school, that's what you thought would make you happy. And then once I graduate, then life will be great. And then you graduate, and the next morning, your dad's like, mow the lawn. You got to get out there and mow the lawn. So what they are finding is it's not just getting the degree. It's not getting married that makes you happy. It's not having kids that makes you happy. It's being able to appreciate every moment in the moment. And so part of appreciating today is the ability to, and this is a C.S. Lewis quote. I don't know if you've gotten into it yet in the podcast, but C.S. Lewis teaches this idea about given gifts versus expected gifts. If you were sent out into the forest to make a meal, what you ought to do, instead of having a really great menu planned and have all these things you'd expect to get from the forest, what you might want to do is just go out there and start looking for what's given. And then when you see roots, thank God for the roots that are edible and pick them up, because that's the given gift. And the happy people always appreciate the given gift, not the expected gift. If I expected a deer to somehow get stuck in a tree so I could go kill it, then I could wait the rest of my life and die waiting for that expected gift. But we always want to go for the given gift. If I see berries that are edible, I take the berries and I thank God for the given gift. And so interestingly, we now know through gratitude research that the given gifts are the things that are always there. Like my parents divorcing is the given gift. It turned into something I didn't expect, but it was still the thing I was given. And then somehow I was able to turn it into something positive and beneficial for me. So giving gifts is one thing. Another thing that's really powerful is about understanding your own strengths. And one way to appreciate today is to live in the present in our strengths. When you know what your strengths are and you bring them to every moment, it really connects you deeply. I think our strengths or our virtues are like our spiritual gifts. It brings you to the present. The more present you are and the more you're counting your blessings, the more you actually start to build this view of abundance in your life. In fact, some of the research on gratitude is very clear that just the perception of gratitude and almost being grateful for things in almost every way, your health, your physiology, addiction management, it's hard to take advantage of your body if you're grateful for what you've been given today. It's hard, even your heart health, in every way, it helps you because being appreciative of today always makes you more appreciative of the moment you're in. Now that leads to believe in tomorrow. Healthy people have a healthy sense of what their purpose is for. And just like I was talking about earlier, when I get up, I've started this program called the 5 a.m. Club. It's Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. And I've done it for 61 days and it's changed my life. I've been fairly effective as a person, but when I started getting up at 5 a.m. and then starting to change every half hour, working out, praying, exercising, meditating, working, writing, doing all these things, I'm a different person. And even if I have a bad day, I know 5 a.m.'s a redo. So I actually can look forward to tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and we'll start it all again. And so healthy people believe in tomorrow, which means they also know they know deeply what their yeses are. So they have more power to say no. And then the last thing that they do is they learn to, in those days and moments, they connect deeply with people along the way. There's some really awesome research that's called micro moments. And they're finding out that people aren't happy all day. What makes somebody really say they have a happy life is they have a lot of about 7-second moments of positive resonance. This is Barbara Fredrickson's work. And basically to be happy is 7 seconds at a time. And you only need maybe 10 of them a day. And 10 7-second moments can become something really powerful. It could be a funny interchange or exchange between you and your spouse. It could be you get on an elevator and you make a funny moment or have an interesting second or two with somebody on the elevator. It's where you're just you go left and they go left, you go right, they go right. It's that weird moment. And then we both laugh. So the minute I have a good moment with somebody and all I have to do is turn it positive. I don't even have to turn it into anything magical. We don't have to dance in Central Park. We don't have to do anything. All I have to do is just be 3 things to create this resonance. I've got to be positive. So positivity means no matter what, I'm going to bring light to the moment. Number 2, I need to be in synchrony, which means I need to be present and in sync with the person, which, by the way, is fairly natural if you're just looking at each other and not thinking about anything but the thing you're doing. And the third thing I need to be is have charity, where I actually look out for their best interest. Positivity, synchrony, and charity creates positive resonance, which according to Barbara Fredrickson, and those are my words, by the way, she uses academic words, but Barbara Fredrickson's work, basically positive resonance is really what love is. So she wrote a book called Love 2.0, and love is nothing more than micro moments of positivity, synchrony, and charity. And when we do that 10 times a day, 15 times a day, 20 times a day, you tend to overall in your day feel happier. So that's the ABCs. And so it's pretty well researched. It's just exactly the opposite of what I grew up being told makes you happy. They told me making money would make me happy. Not true. They told me that being popular and well-liked would make me happy. Weirdly, it doesn't. They told me that accomplishing a lot would make me happy. It doesn't. But what does is appreciating today, believing in tomorrow, connecting deeply along the way.
I love it. I think there's no better way to end than that, Matt. I appreciate you so much for spending time.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you influencing and impacting the lives of thousands of people because the world is better because of it. And
thank you.
This was more than a 7-minute or 7-second micro moment for me. This was an hour.
For me too.
So
it was awesome.
Yeah, I love you,
remember,
Matt.
that's the cool thing. I love you too. And when you feel it, I feel it. And when I feel it, you feel it, if we're in sync. So if you're feeling good when you're expressing gratitude and being grateful, then go share it. And if you can just do that, you will, in 7 seconds or whatever, you'll feel the connection. And once that happens, don't doubt it. Like they may forget it in 8 seconds, but it was real. And we just need to start doing that neighbor to neighbor, friend by friend, city by city, community by community.
Spread that. We'll ignite that fire, like I say, with that spark of gratitude, but then let's turn it into a wildfire.
That's right.
And check
Thanks,
out
Randy.
MattTownsend.com. Join me. I'll be there at his events. I appreciate him so much. And
thank you.
We'll see you next time, folks. Thank you.
You're the best.